We're going to take a diversion from our study in the book of Psalms this morning, and I'd like you to turn to the book of John. The book of John, chapter 11. I've had quite an interesting week this week, part of which is contained in this envelope right here. And it was about midnight on Tuesday. And I'm sorry, if anybody needs a Bible, slip up your hand, because we've got some we want to get into that hand so you can follow along once we get to our study. It was about midnight, Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, that I got a call from my sister saying hospice nurse just left and said mom has 12 to 48 hours. She's been totally unresponsive for a day and a half. And so I got in the car and got out to my folks' house by about 1:30, and out in the North Hills, and just about the same time that my sister arrived from Slippery Rock, and a few minutes later my brother arrived from out in Industry. And my dad was there. My mom's been, she's got a hospital bed set up in the dining room, and she was, totally unresponsive. You could get down right next to her, and she wouldn't respond at all to touch, to sound, to anything else. And we sat there and talked to my dad, and the two caregivers were there, and just kind of watching her to make sure she was still breathing, the oxygen was on, and so forth. And talked to my dad for a while, and then finally he went to sleep. And I guess my brother and I were last to go to sleep about 4:30 in the morning, and then I woke up at 7 o'clock. And just woke up and got up and went out to see where everybody was, and walked in, and my sister was asleep next to my mom on a chair next to the bed there, and the caregiver was asleep on the chair on the other side, and my mom was still breathing, could still see her breathing, and she was still out. And so I went and made myself a cup of tea, and then suddenly I heard voices. And I thought maybe the caregiver had turned on the TV in the room just to, kind of keep her awake. She had been there by this time for, 15 or 18 hours, because she hadn't expected to spend the whole night. And I went in, and no, it was my mother who was awake, aware, and talking with my sister. And I walked in, and my brother came down, and the three of us spent about 30 minutes with her. Woke my dad up, and he came in. Got to spend about 30 minutes with her and just talking and telling her how much we love her and so forth, and then she went back to sleep and was out for most of the day. And then my sister's kids arrived about 5:30 or so forth, and I had laid down to take a nap because I'm not used to going on just a couple hours of sleep anymore. And again, I heard voices, and I went out, and she was awake, and she was talking to all the kids. And I talked to my sister, and I said, has she been up for very long? And she said, as soon as my kids walked into the room, she woke up and began speaking to them. And then my kids came down later that day, and over the next couple of days, we've been visiting, and she wakes up for a time and is there. And you go, wow. Now, I know that this is not saying that, okay, everything's okay, she's healed, she's going to live. No, she's dying. But God has given us this tremendous gift, this tremendous opportunity to share with her and talk with her in the last few moments of her life. And it's more for us than for her. Because, as I shared with you some time back, a few months ago, I got the opportunity to sit down and pray with my mom and pray a prayer of salvation for her. So I know exactly where she's going, and she does know, and I've prayed with her a couple of times when I've been over there, and she knows, and the light in her eyes is evidence of the fact that she knows exactly where she's going. And here I am carrying around in my Bible a copy of my birth certificate, which my dad gave me. My dad's been going through, he's 89 years old. He's been going through stuff at the house, and every time I go over there, he gives me some odd thing. And this is the hospital card, with my little feet on it and stuff. And, thanks. And now I know that I was born at 9:58 a.m. I know not just the day. And the other thing I have in there is the other thing he gave me, which is the deed for the 2 plots for my mom and dad that are already paid for. And I thought, well, that's kind of an interesting combination of things to have in this envelope, life and death, life and death. And as I've been talking with my sister and my brother, and somewhat with my dad, and certainly a lot with my mom, I've been thinking about death this week. And if you have been touched by a death in your family, in your years, you know that in those periods of time, we step outside of our comfort zone of life just going on today like it did yesterday and like it probably will tomorrow, and are suddenly reminded of the fact that there is a very big part of life that we like to avoid, and that is death. When I went back to work on Friday and talked to my boss, and he asked how things were going, and I said, well, Tom, death is a part of life. It's a part of life. It's something we are all guaranteed, but not necessarily. If you saw the front of your bulletin this morning with this morning's message, you'll notice it looks like I made a mistake, but I didn't make a mistake. I wanted you to think about this. Because first of all, I was thinking of what I wanted to share this morning of what happens when we die. What happens when we die? And the more I thought about it, the more I realized the fact that most of, if not all of the people I will be speaking to this morning are believers and followers of Jesus Christ. And so you don't have to worry about it, because you're not going to die. And if you don't believe me, believe Jesus Christ. Take a look at the passage in John chapter 11. We're going to pick it up in verse 20, and let me set the scene for you. It's Gospel of John chapter 11. Let me set the scene. Jesus and his disciples have left Jerusalem after an unsuccessful stoning of Jesus and an unsuccessful seizing of Jesus by the Jews there. They were out to get him and kill him. And they got out of town. And they went into a place called Perea, which is on the other side of the Jordan. It's outside of the realm of Judea, where Jerusalem was. Now, this is about 1 month before Jesus' death on the cross and resurrection. And he hears some bad news about a very close friend of his named Lazarus. He hears that he's about to die. Now, Mary, Martha, and Lazarus, 2 sisters and a brother, they were very close friends of Jesus. Martha, who was probably the eldest, sometime earlier had invited Jesus and his disciples into their home, probably about a year earlier. And if you're taking notes, you can jot down Luke chapter 10, starting at verse 38, is the reference that I'm talking about. And you remember the story, Martha was busy taking care of things while Mary sat at Jesus' feet while he was teaching. And Martha got a little upset about that. And Jesus said, hey, she's chosen the better way, actually. You're worried about fussing around and making sure dinner's okay, and that's wonderful, but Mary's actually chosen the better way. Mary was also the one who poured costly perfume on Jesus' head just before he left for Jerusalem and his death. Now, Jesus, knowing that Lazarus will physically die, stays where he is when he heard the news for 2 more days. And then he goes to see Lazarus in their hometown of Bethany, which is just 2 miles away from Jerusalem, where there are all these officials seeking to kill Jesus. And Jesus' disciples think, okay, we're going there to die, and that's what they say.